Welcome to Recruiting Like a Marketer, how to get creative to beat the competition. How do we stay competitive as recruiters in this dog-eat-dog hiring market? You probably all have a few heartbreaking stories of the one that got away. The dream candidate who had it all. Impeccable resume, talent for days, passion for the job. Today, we're going to talk about how to recruit creatively to attract and engage the talent you want. We're so excited to speak with Casey Jorgensen, Textio's Chief People Officer, and Julie Kukulis, Glassdoor's Global Head of Talent Acquisition. A few housekeeping notes. Today's webcast is being streamed through your computer, so there's no dial-in number. If you have any questions during the webcast, submit them through the Q&A tool. Find answers to common technical issues located in the Help tool at the bottom of your screen. And check out the resource list for a ton of useful content. Oh, and don't worry, if you can't join us for the entire webinar, we'll be sending out an on-demand video of the session. With that out of the way, let's get started. To kick things off, let's put on our marketing hats for a moment. The 5 essential components to a marketing plan. They are, number 1, market. Number 2, positioning. 3, your presence. 4, strategy. And 5, measurement. Research is really the backbone of the marketing plan. It's critical to identify habits in the industry, your market size, market growth or decline, and any current trends. Casey, start us off. When you're recruiting, how do you and your team work to understand your market and the competition?
Oh, that's a really great question. We actually love to understand the market and typically take a look at economic indicators such as job growth, unemployment rate, things like industry trends. But we also like to understand the job market and the local talent pool. From a competitive perspective, we want to know who's in our backyard that's hiring for the roles or skills that we need. And as you can imagine, we're based in Seattle, so companies like Microsoft and Amazon are such a massive presence here. So to understand what they're offering and how we're competing against them in the talent space is really important. Now, of course, they're not our product competitors, but they are our talent competitors. So again, we assess and analyze their position in the market relative to ours. But of course, we take a look at industry competitors too, regardless of their geography, and essentially we do the same. Figure out what are they offering candidates, what's their process like, what's the experience like, and how do we measure up to our, if they're not in our backyard, but they are our industry competitors.
Okay. Julie, 71% of employees or job seekers report that they consider 2 or more job offers on average before accepting a job. How do you and the Glassdoor recruiting team look at how you stack up against the competition?
Yeah, it's really interesting. We've definitely noticed that these days people have to have their multiple offers and feel like they're making a good decision, which is really wonderful, and we respect that. And we do a few different things on that front. We try to learn as much as possible from our candidates so we can make really competitive offers. As one example, if you would have asked me a year ago what was the most challenging thing and kept me up at night, I would have been extremely concerned about going up against other offers for engineering or technical roles. But because we were able to get as much information from our candidates as possible and feed that information both to our executive team and our internal compensation team, we were really able to strategize about how to put together really competitive offers. And now when we go up against other companies and other competing offers, I don't worry as much about comp, and we're really able to focus on what matters, which is the right fit and really making sure that our job is a great match for someone.
Okay, as a follow-up, both to Casey and to Julie, when you think about understanding your market and the competition, I think compensation is absolutely the place you automatically go, but how do you think about your overall offering as a company, whether that's benefits or company culture, et cetera? How do you look at the market and understand the competition in that sense?
Do you mind if I jump in first?
Oh, go ahead, Julie.
Sorry. I was just going to say that I feel like this is one of the unique things about Glassdoor is that we always talk about our informed candidates, and we have so much information on our site about all employers, but also specifically about us. And so we really can allow the candidates to learn everything that they're interested in a company, and learn from those lessons where they've made a bad choice in the past and had a job they didn't love. Now they could really be informed up front, and I feel like for me that's the biggest differentiator.
Casey?
For us, we take a look at our entire offerings or the total rewards, and compensation is obviously a big piece of it, but understanding that so many companies are offering, really competitive pay, it's about the work, the environment, the culture. And there's always something more that people want, and we tap into that by asking really thoughtful questions. Why do they want to leave where they are? What makes them decide to think of Textio as opposed to someplace else? What are the values that we have that really resonate with them? And we really focus and highlight those along with compensation and putting together just a really strong total rewards package.
Really insightful. Thank you. So that is a perfect segue into know who and where your candidates are. Casey, what are some of the social platforms that your prospective candidates use, or where are they researching your company?
Yeah. So, we think that our candidates are everywhere. I joke sometimes here that they're probably not on TikTok yet. I've got a young daughter who's always on there, but I'm not ready to play her. But they're definitely, no matter what platform they're on, they're mostly online, they're mostly mobile, and they have a ton of options when it comes to social platforms. Because we're hiring for so many types of roles, we have quite a few personas, essentially, that we are looking for. Although, add to that we always believe there's more than one persona for each open requisition. But like marketers, we've got to take this omni-channel approach to getting in front of candidates, both online and offline. And we do this by constantly building on our employment brand and being where they might be. Our brand really helps us to reach the places that influence the candidate's decision to apply or to talk to one of our recruiters if they reach out. We know that they obviously take or research us through places like LinkedIn and Glassdoor. They want to see who's connected to us, like via LinkedIn, or they go to our website, they visit all of our social channels, they ask around. They're really just trying to get a sense of who we are and how others experience us. Again, because they're everywhere, and sometimes in places we may not have traditionally looked, we try to constantly build and expand and communicate what our employment brand is. And then we tap into our current employees and ask, where are you? What do you like to do online? Where are you? Like, what are your haunts online? And we try to make sure that we're there as well. And they really help us to get our message out every single day because they're constantly online and oftentimes are talking about Textio.
Okay. Julie, when you think about where and how you showcase Glassdoor's values and its strengths, and pairing that with sort of identifying where candidates are, how do you and your team approach where you showcase your values and your strengths to attract the right candidate?
Yeah, I think just to piggyback on what Casey is saying, we know our candidates are out in so many different places, and then of course we have to make decisions about where we can reasonably go. The TikTok example, we can't go everywhere in the moment, but eventually we could go there. But what we like to do in terms of showing off our values and our strengths is we like to have it out there in as many different touch points as possible that a candidate may come across. And ideally, we want candidates to see this information in the stories that we tell before they even ever consider applying for a position at Glassdoor. And then we weave those values into our interview process as well, whether it's in the recruiters who tell their stories to candidates or in interview questions and the experience that you have during the interview process itself. And we're continuing to build content to show our candidates both in direct communications that we send to them, on our Glassdoor profile, and of course throughout social channels.
Okay. Now, Julie, you did say that, TikTok is not a place where you're looking to invest right now.
Yes.
But you But there is an amazing campaign that involves some pretty amazing dance moves on LinkedIn. Talk to us about some of the ways that your team is getting creative to attract talent on LinkedIn.
Yeah, so we, like probably many of our other SMB customers, are budget constrained, and we decided that we wanted to start telling our stories, but we had to get pretty creative in terms of how we produce the content and what we were able to deliver. We're lucky to be Glassdoor, a company with a great mission and brand and a very large audience already, but we wanted to start showing off the people behind that with some great brand, with people behind our great brand, telling our stories to show off that we're 1,000 people who put this company together and work here together every day. So we started making really fun video and photo content on LinkedIn, and the one that you're specifically mentioning is one of our recruiters named Brianna Kelly, who wanted to have her own brand and figure out what that was, and so she created a campaign called Monday Moves that's on LinkedIn most Mondays, where she does a dance move, talks about something wonderful at Glassdoor, and highlights a position. And what's funny about this and really cool is that she tried to figure out what her own brand was, and so she wanted to be fun and funny and slightly self-deprecating, hence the dance moves. And it's really amazing because it's very, very authentic and really fun and just a very small snippet that you can get that brings a little joy, hopefully.
Absolutely, and it's a great way to engage with those informed, career-conscious candidates who happen to be on LinkedIn. So now let's transition into knowing who your biggest employer competitors are. Casey, when you think about job descriptions, right, and Textio is a huge proponent of job descriptions, how can recruiters really see how their descriptions compare to the competition, how they stack up?
I suggest if you're not already, you should definitely take a look at your competitor's career site and ask yourself questions like, how are they positioning themselves in the market? It's a really good idea to actually dig into their job descriptions and figure out how they describe their company, what are the words they're using, the department, how do they describe that, the role. Do you see their values showing up in the job description or somewhere on the career site? And how are they defining the person that they're looking for? Is it just simple bullet points and it seems pretty generic? Again, what you're trying to do is look for words and phrases that stand out. You want to get a clue of their culture and what it's really like to work there. I'd also say that tone is super important because you want to get a sense of, is the tone or the words they're using, do they come across as biased in any way? Does it sound as though maybe it's targeting some people, but it could be a turnoff to others? For us, like just being Textio, we really geek out around the data that's in job descriptions because we honestly understand that there's power in our words and the language we use. And if we're looking for particular outcomes, we've got to make sure that we start with the right words. So we know how difficult it can be to do all of that just to see how you stack up against your competitors. We actually created this cool site. It's textio.com/Glassdoor. So anyone that's on this webinar can actually go there and we'll generate a language report for you. And we're going to analyze all of your publicly listed job posts and compare you to your talent competitors just to make it a little easier. And you get a sense of what I'm talking about and why those words are important and how you phrase or put together a job description.
That's a great resource for the folks tuning in to leverage. For newer businesses, Julie, breaking through the noise to attract talent can be hard. What can they really do to make sure that their employer brand stands out?
Yeah, I think really determining what your brand and your story is going to be or how to push it out there in case you don't have a well-known brand or an amazing marketing team like we do. Being really true to those stories and making sure that those carry through when you're pushing information. Another one of the campaigns that we started to do was something about Glassdoor, and we really wanted to showcase our great employees and with just an individual photo and an individual story, and those become so powerful. And so as long as you're tight in what your positioning is and who you are as a brand, I think that's where stories will really take shape and become very powerful no matter what size you are.
Great advice. Even a decade ago, employee culture was viewed by CEOs as flexible, hard to measure, and a nice to have. But now we're in a culture-first decade where workplace transparency, employee engagement, and sentiment are business imperatives for executives. Casey, how do you think about Textio's own employee value proposition and creating one that really communicates how you want to be perceived and what differentiates your culture and your values or your mission? How do you approach that positioning?
Yeah, I always say that my favorite tool in my HR toolbox is the word or the question why. And so starting by understanding the why of the people who work here, of the people who are drawn to Textio, what is it that calls to them? And anyone can do this, honestly. Like, ask yourself, like, why were you drawn to your current employer? Like, why do employees stay? We all have our own personal reasons. I know for one, if, I just stopped there and, forced our EVP to be in line with my personal reasons, it wouldn't be accurate. And it definitely wouldn't be authentic because it doesn't represent the whole, like the many values that are represented when people come here. When it comes down to it, like, honestly, your EVP is about your unique offering. The things that you have as an employer, it's your culture, it's the type of work that you value, it's the geography that you live in, your actual values, your philosophies, the industry. There's so much that will resonate with certain people. And it really just expresses your company's entire package and ultimately helps people decide if what you offer aligns with what a candidate's looking for. It's very important that you don't copy the employee value proposition of another company. I know that sometimes it can feel like, you want to just take someone else's EVP because they've done so well. But I think in this day and age, like, people are going to, like, call you out and they see when you're not being authentic. And it's super important that you want to, like, stand on your own. And I promise that you're going to have differentiation because there are just so many different variables that go into it. But don't force it. Don't fake it because people won't want to join and they definitely won't want to stay there. You really have to just, again, articulate an authentic EVP and then catalyze it. And you catalyze it by communicating it everywhere, and that's what helps to build your employment brand.
Casey, I'm glad you called us all out for the potential or the temptation to cut, copy, and paste an EVP. It's so tempting, especially when you see, some of those big powerhouse companies that have this all figured out, right? And they've got a 20-person team who can really focus on this. But for the smaller companies, it's hard to take the time to really craft that positioning. Are there a couple of, like, just baby steps that folks can sort of take to start to think about their EVP?
Yeah, again, I think, and I would say that this is the really important work because, there's an opportunity cost for not taking even just, a couple of hours to try to figure out your messaging. You don't want to spin your wheels, but start with, like, again, with yourself. Like, what are some of the reasons why you work at that organization? What are the things that you think are pretty cool or unique or interesting? Or when you've talked to other candidates or other people in the company, just ask a few people, like, what do you think are some of the best things about, enter your company name? And jot that down and try that messaging and see, like, when you talk to candidates or when you put this in your job description, see how that lands. I think that's a really great and easy place to start.
Wonderful. Julie, Glassdoor has really always been at the forefront of workplace transparency, but it's not enough to rest on our laurels. What do you and your team do actively to maintain workplace transparency and convey that to our candidates?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting. Since I got here, I've been saying because we're Glassdoor, we do these various things. And because we're Glassdoor, we're very open to feedback, and we encourage candidates and employees to write reviews on Glassdoor and show off our true culture. We also conduct pulse surveys and engagement surveys internally, and then we really work hard as a company to action those. And candidates can also, of course, use our tools as they look at things like comparing offers, which we know works against our offers as well, but what we're trying to do is really make sure that everyone's paid fairly and that everything is open and transparent. So I would say we work very actively on this particular piece.
Wonderful. Now let's transition into building your presence. The best marketers use proactive tactics to get in front of the right candidates. Casey, for Textio, how have you really leveraged traditional marketing tactics like custom email or candidate messaging, social videos, job ads, or behind-the-scenes content to get in front of the right candidates and show them what it's like to really work at Textio?
Oh, yeah, good question. I'll say we do some of those a lot better than others. Like I talked to the people on the people recruiting team, and I let them know, like, there was like some marketing rule that said you got to hear advertising like 7 or more times before people will actually take notice or even begin to think about taking action. And so, like, for us, it's like, how do we like hone in on the right messages, because people are constantly being bombarded with them every single day. And like, we really like kind of pride ourselves in, okay, if we can't do all of the social media videos, if we don't have like such a large marketing organization or a large people recruiting organization to do some of the things that larger companies can, we work with what we've got, and we can control the custom messages. And personalized messages, I can tell you, go such a long way. We fine-tune our language and analyze, how those words work and how they impact the outcomes that we're looking for. And we look at response rates, engagement rates, how many people are applying, how many people are getting through the pipeline, et cetera. Again, if there's only one thing you could do, like focusing on that custom messaging and knowing that you can spread that message is such an important and easy thing to do. I think reaching out to individual candidates, posting engaging job descriptions on your website, whether it's with aggregators or other platforms or other just kind of tactics that you can use. And then another thing that we do is we really leverage employee-generated content. So while internally as a small but mighty team, we may not have tons of like social media videos or a lot of like behind the scenes content that sometimes require a lot of upfront investment. We have got, over 150 people that have really significant like cameras and video equipment in the palm of their hands. And they're posting social media posts, and we just give them nudges. And occasionally, again, they post something about Textio and what it's like to work there. And that's how we can help, take that employee-generated content and use it to really get out there so people see what it's like to work at Textio from the people that actually work at Textio.
I like that a lot. Julie, what advice do you have for people tuning in about how they can really use marketing-like content to create awareness or affinity and a positive candidate experience?
Yeah, I think Casey got it spot on, which is the more real you make those campaigns, the more your candidates can really relate to what you're doing. And when those campaigns or ads or even job descriptions match up with what they experienced during the interview process, or especially once they start working at your company, the magic really happens. I'll give you a fun example. Last summer, we have our interns work on some pretty cool projects, and this one intern last summer worked on a project with comparing job descriptions with Glassdoor reviews to see if they matched up. And it was so interesting because for me, as a head of TA, I'm super interested in making sure that our job descriptions really reflect what life is like when you get here. And so I think focusing all of your energy just in making sure that all of those stories that you tell in campaigns or job descriptions or the stories recruiters tell are super, super genuine.
I love that. And I'm really impressed by the fact that it was an intern who really led that. It actually tees me up for my next question is really who on your team really oversees these kinds of efforts to build brand and employer presence. Is this something that a team of 2 people can do, or does it require really robust strategy?
Yeah, so we have a project team within our talent acquisition team, so I would say it's our side jobs that helps to work on these particular campaigns. And what's really funny is I was talking to our sister company, Indeed, to the head of brand there, and Brian, he was telling me at one time, I was intimidated, and we feel this way sometimes about Indeed because they're 10 times larger than we are, and they have 10 times as many people, it seems, on all of their teams as we do. And he said, don't worry, Julie, when we started, it was just me. Here's what I did as one person, and then we grew, and he sort of described how he grew from 1 to 60 people on their brand team, just to amaze you at how large their team is. But we're taking that approach to it. We're starting small, combining some efforts together. As Casey mentioned earlier, we want to also solicit our employees in that as well, which was one of Indeed's tactics too. Takes a village.
Yeah, Julie, I love that. Your team has a side hustle.
Mm-hmm. We love it.
Let's transition into honing your recruiting strategy. Today, job seekers really want more than a job description. So nearly 60% of employees or job seekers are always or often looking for more information about a company after reading a job description. It's really important to make job titles work hard for you. Casey, what are you doing differently now than in years past when it comes to actually drafting job recs?
Oh, okay. I feel like I called people out again. I hope I'm not going to call everyone out again now, but I could tell you that for me, writing job descriptions used to feel like an exercise in creating a Frankenstein. I'd copy the header section from one department's requisition. I would change maybe one, possibly 2 words. I straight up just plagiarize another company's bullet points of requirements, and then just pull up a Google search on, what's a synonym for experience, or what's a good synonym for good. I'm going to be honest, I think everyone who's been in recruiting has probably done this at some point, and there is absolutely no shame because it's so hard to write effective job descriptions. It really is difficult. Of course, today we are far more intentional. Obviously, being Texio and being in the HR tech space, especially focused on job descriptions, we have a slightly unfair advantage, but we understand the power that our words have and how if we can use them correctly, will inspire action, and it will inspire the action that we're really looking for. But we also know that if those words are used poorly, like just the whole copy-paste sometimes and using someone else's words, it doesn't feel authentic. And it can actually drive people away unintentionally. And so the thing that's really different now is being intentional with the words and being intentional in how we actually describe the jobs and the people that we're looking for. And we know that, honestly, if you think about the talent pool right now and how competitive it is, it's shrinking. And if we can use the right words to expand that talent pool so it doesn't make it even more difficult for us to do our jobs, then we're on the right track. Of course, our recruiters actually use our platform, our language platform, to create consistent, values-based, inspirationally neutral and engaging descriptions. And it makes it so much easier. Because our platform relies on augmented writing, it learns and it analyzes, proves to help them write even better job descriptions. And so we could go from just writing, if I took one little bullet point, that our tool can actually make full sentences and paragraphs that's actually centered on value. So that's really a big difference in how we're approaching job descriptions today. It's utilizing our tool and mainly understanding that language has impact.
Okay. Julie, you touched on this earlier in the webinar, and so I want to dig in a little bit about how you infuse your company's culture and values into job descriptions and sort of the evolution of a job description that you post. What does it really look like when you're putting together a job description now for 2020 versus maybe 5 years ago? What are some of the things that you're really doing to make sure that that job description works extra hard to recruit the talent that you want?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, I will say that we definitely all did the Frankenstein version that Casey talked about before. And what I started doing originally with the managers here at Glassdoor is just really thinking about what you need on your team and thinking about competencies that you need and how you want to up-level each time you hire before you start writing. And so we got managers to start doing that type of an exercise. And then when we brought in Textio, it really began to help us here because, again, you can really think about the words and be very conscious of how you're describing your positions. So it becomes a much richer exercise to put together these job descriptions and also think about using them as an attraction tool. A little side plug to Textio, one of the things that our managers really love is the gamification of writing a job description in Textio and how you're working towards getting to 100. One of I'll actually call him out, our CIO, who's a super big fan of Textio, said at this point he could just throw in a few words and score himself 100. He's so good at doing it, which I thought was hilarious. But we're also starting to think about things like video job descriptions, and we've started to incorporate those as well, because then you really get the manager to tell the true story of what they're looking for in the moment.
I love the use of video and really making sure that these job descriptions work hard for you. So I appreciate that, ladies. Your employees can really be your best recruiters. And Casey and Julie, you both attested earlier in the webinar about employee advocacy. How do you start to engage your employees to become employer brand advocates? Casey, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you. Our Textios are amazing brand advocates. Often without us urging, they are sharing their experiences of Textio. I think in part it's because we highly value the employee experience. And we know that if employees enjoy working here, they're going to share their experiences with friends and family. From there, it's really about providing opportunities and education to help them spread the message, like having internal events and putting together a company hashtag and asking people to share, bringing or inviting friends and family into other events, gets them to also want to share and have kind of like feel good about where, their friend or family member works. Essentially, it really is just giving them opportunities. And the other thing that we like to talk about is helping them build their own personal and professional brand. We do things like our CEO, Karen, put together workshops on how to actually build your personal brand. And we let people, they attend these workshops. They go out and attend conferences. They speak on behalf of Textio. So we really help them to build, again, their personal brands. Another thing that I've actually done is put together a social media day, and it's something that we're going to do here as well. And I definitely encourage this. It's just a day. It's super simple. You can make it really fun and have people come in. They'll take videos. You could bring some fun props or plain backgrounds for like sites like LinkedIn so people can get really good headshots. And then we ask them and encourage them to leave honest review on like Glassdoor. And then provide people, again, with that education. Give them a tip sheet or make a little Wikipedia page about how do you write a good bio? How do you get speaking engagements? Like how do you improve your presence online? And again, just talk about the hashtags that the company has and places that people can share. You don't need to be pushy because, again, you want it to be authentic. You want this to come from the voice and a really good place from the employees. Mm-hmm. I really say focus on the employee experience and create moments. Create the moments that people can then just share.
Absolutely. The moments are really where it's at, and I think those are the things that really empower employees to be your advocates, whether that's on social media or in person. Julie, one of the things that Glassdoor does very well is host hiring events, and then also leverages tools like Altru to really get the employee experience out there. And so really allowing employees to speak on video about what it's like to work here at Glassdoor, and thus being brand advocates to potential candidates. Talk to us about how you think about some of those strategies and leveraging your employees to be great recruiters.
Yeah, absolutely. And first, I just have to say that no one can see me, but I'm nodding my head like a fool because everything I'm listening to, I'm like, yes, yes, writing notes, totally going to steal some of these ideas. But yes, so one of the things I talked about earlier was that we have a great brand. We have 1,000 people who work here, but people don't necessarily think about working at Glassdoor when they come to Glassdoor because there are so many other resources and reasons that you might be here. So we wanted to highlight our people, and we did that in a few different ways. We've talked about campaigns. We also wanted to do some in-person hiring events. So we've done some tech talks, mixers. Our sales team in Chicago will also do a little hiring event as part of the interview process. So we use a video tool, screening tool, to screen our candidates and then bring them to a hiring event so they can meet our people, meet our managers, get to know some of the other people that you might be working with. And then one of the other tools that you talked about, Amy Elisa, was Altru Labs has a product that allows you to do employee testimonials and connect them to your careers page, as well as posting them on social. But it's been really wonderful, and I think one of my favorite, aside from yours, Amy, one of my favorite Altru videos that we've done was a collaboration of two of our marketing folks. You can see it on our careers page, and they were actually talking about collaboration and how much they enjoy working together. And it's just a really fun additional way to show off our employees, get more people telling our story, and really make that connection.
Wonderful. Now let's transition into measuring your success, right? Because it's good and fantastic to have an amazing recruiting strategy and leveraging some of these cool marketing tactics. But ultimately, it comes down to the numbers. How many butts can we get in seats, if you will? Casey, how do you ask for and receive feedback on your recruiting process? And how does Glassdoor play a role in how you're measuring your success with candidates?
Yeah, Julie's mentioned so much, obviously, that Glassdoor really thrives on feedback. And like I say, it's the same, for us. We are always looking to improve our process. And so, we send candidate surveys. We send candidate surveys to people who both have and have not received an offer because we want to understand every part of our recruiting and hiring process and get feedback on how we can improve. We ask quick but really thoughtful questions. We let them answer anonymously. And then, again, we determine what's going well and where do we need to actually beef some things up. We check Glassdoor consistently, like honestly, weekly. We're having monthly meetings around Glassdoor, and we're really trying to understand the sentiments. Like, what do people really feel when they come to Texio, when they're being interviewed at Texio, and what is some really good feedback that we can get from them about, again, the process and the things that we need to do. The nice thing is that some people don't complete our survey, but Glassdoor is such a wonderful presence and has done such an amazing thing in the talent acquisition space to provide a space, to have a real good open space for people to anonymously give their feedback. And while sometimes it feels a little uncomfortable, I can't tell you how often that when you engage and you answer thoughtfully and reflect on the things that can improve, feedback is a gift. And the Glassdoor feedback is a wonderful gift that has definitely helped us to improve our processes. So we're constantly looking at how we can change things, and Glassdoor plays a huge role in that strategy.
Right. Feedback is great to have. As you said, like, I think feedback-rich cultures are thriving all across the country right now, and that's a great thing to be happening. However, there's that extra step of putting that feedback into action. So Julie, when you and your team look at the feedback that you've received from candidates, how do you think about putting that feedback into action and putting that into your process so that the candidate experience becomes even better? How do you think about that or approach that?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So we obviously listen to feedback that we hear during the interview process or about the interview process, but what's really interesting is our team is on the front lines. So there's an example, and I will not call the team out, but there's an example that I remember where we could feel that things weren't going so well internally with this one particular team. There had been a decent amount of attrition. Management was maybe not the best at the time, and we started seeing some reviews. So in addition to the pain we were feeling internally with that team, we also were starting to see it show up in reviews. And because we have that ability to share those reviews with our leadership, we in TA were actually really able to come to the table with a voice and affect change. And we now, this is probably 8 months or a year later, we have new leadership, fully staffed up team. The team is so different than it was before, and we really were able to, even just as a TA team, see the feedback, listen to it, take it to the right places, and then get it actioned.
So we've talked about a great number of strategies about recruiting like a marketer, and we've gotten some great tips and takeaways, and now the hotlines are sort of blowing up with questions. I'm seeing a bunch of questions roll in, so let's take a few. For Julie, let's start. If you were to recommend 2 things to tackle first to up-level your employer brand, where would you say is the best place to start?
Well, I think first and foremost, you really want to get crisp and tight on the story you want to tell as an employer, which likely is going to start with your mission and your values. And whether you have resources to push that story out onto different sites or not, the more you can tell your story in an authentic way, the better. So you can always start with your job descriptions, your careers page, your recruiter conversations. Those are your best storytellers likely, and then expand from there depending on your resources. And of course, partnering with marketing. And by the way, that might have been 10 things and not just 2. Sorry about that.
That's quite all right. I know the person who asked the question will appreciate it. We have another one coming in for Casey. How do you ensure that the algorithms at work in the Textio platform aren't learning from inherent bias in human behavior? Great question.
Oh, wow, that's a heavy-hitting question, huh? No, great question. You know, honestly, for the most marginalized groups, it's actually possible that there is a visceral turnoff. They are applying to so many jobs. So let's say they apply to about 100 jobs that they see, and they're not really excited about any of them. There's something in there, that feeling that Julie mentioned, that really just doesn't resonate with them, but they need a job, and therefore they're forced to apply for something. And they, unfortunately, may be choosing the best of the worst. But what happens, and what we're able to do, is actually take that data at scale, and we're talking hundreds of millions of data points, and finding statistical patterns within those data points to see what are the things that are resonating, what are those trends that are coming up that says this is something positive. So we're not just looking at one single job post and saying, this is the end all, this is the most amazing thing ever. Instead, we look across an entire population of job posts, and we uncover them piece by piece, and we make them better. And instead of just using that one document, like I mentioned, using hundreds of millions of them and finding the signal in all of that noise that's actually working and building on progress, which is really important for us. So we don't just leave it up to human behavior and inherent bias. We research, we lean on data, and we constantly iterate and improve, and we demand better of ourselves to make sure that our system is constantly improving.
I love that. Just one last question, ladies, because we're conscious of time. But as we look ahead, we've started a new year, a new decade, 2020. As you look ahead to the trends that you think will really be taking hold in the talent acquisition or HR spaces, what do you predict are some of the biggest trends that we're going to see this year and beyond?
I can go first.
Don't all jump.
Julie. So,
Great.
so I think one of the things that we're trying to do is leverage technology like AI. And don't worry, AI is not taking any of our jobs away. But what we are trying to do is use it smartly to reduce the minutia, to get people through the process faster, so that our recruiters can then spend our time in more meaningful work, right? Working with hiring managers, having more important conversations with candidates through the process. Obviously, we said focusing on some of these other projects if our teams are small, but really using technology like AI in smart ways.
Yeah, that's actually a really great point, Julie. I think AI is going to play a really big role. It's a trend that's popping up in both recruiting and HR tech, along with other industries. One of the trends that I see or will continue to see is just getting back to personalization. Again, people are constantly being bombarded with generic messaging, and it's just not landing at all. And so I think you're going to see this combination of companies using technology as a tool in order to help them create more personalized messaging to people. And so it's actually going to happen at scale. So it's a lot easier to, again, get in front of people and get the responses that you're looking for. But don't see a world where technology is not going to be playing a big role in how we do our work in recruiting and TA. But to Julie's point, I also don't see a world where they're taking our jobs either. not that way.
Ladies, that is fantastic. I really appreciate all of the insights that you've shared today. I've been jotting down notes, and I'm sure everyone tuning in has been doing the same. So thank you to Casey and to Julie for sharing your expertise, and thank you to everyone who has joined us today.